On a cold December evening in 2024, Brian Thompson, the well-known CEO of United Healthcare, was shot outside an exclusive restaurant while on his way to a business event. The killer had held a deep grudge against Brian for a long time and decided to take revenge. The police investigated the case, finding surveillance footage and other evidence. But the key question remains, were they able to solve the case? Who was the killer? And what had happened between him and Brian? These are the questions we'll answer piece by piece as the investigation unfolds. Brian Thompson was born in 1972 and grew up in a humble, middle-class family that valued hard work and determination. His dad worked long shifts in a factory and his mom was a dedicated schoolteacher. From a young age, Brian learned the importance of discipline and effort. He wasn't like most kids. He had a spark that made him stand out. Brian loved to read and couldn't get enough of books on history, puzzles, and problem solving. His curiosity seemed endless. Teachers were impressed by his sharp thinking and his courage to take on challenges that others avoided. By the time he finished high school, it was clear Brian was meant for something bigger than an ordinary life. With a scholarship in hand, Brian Thompson went to the University of Iowa, where he studied business administration. College wasn't just about learning from books. It was where he built his leadership skills. He led projects, organized study groups, and was known for not just spotting problems, but also coming up with solutions. After graduating in 1994, Brian joined the insurance industry, a field full of opportunities, but often slowed down by red tape. He was determined to bring change. His sharp thinking and natural talent for motivating others quickly got him noticed. By 2009, his reputation as a smart and forward-thinking leader earned him a spot at United Healthcare, one of the biggest healthcare companies in the world. At United Healthcare, Brian did really well. He wasn't just focused on making money, he wanted to help people. He came up with new ideas to make healthcare cheaper and easier to access, so more people could get the care they needed. The company grew a lot under his leadership, and many people trusted and appreciated what he was doing. In 2021, Brian became the CEO, leading one of the biggest healthcare companies in the world. But success also brought problems. Not everyone liked the changes he was making. Some people didn't agree with his ideas, and competitors tried to bring him down. Critics wondered if his plans would really work. Even with all this, Brian didn't give up. He believed healthcare could be better for everyone, and he worked hard to make it happen. Even with his great achievements, Brian's time leading United Healthcare wasn't always easy. Behind the success, there were serious criticisms and controversies that often grabbed attention. Some people accused him of caring more about company profits than about helping patients. These debates created a more complicated and less perfect image of the man behind the business. One of Brian Thompson's most controversial decisions was cutting coverage for certain medical procedures. This made many people angry, policyholders and doctors alike. Protests broke out across the country, with crowds gathering outside United Healthcare offices accusing Brian of turning his back on the people his company was supposed to help. But Brian didn't back down. He explained that the cuts were necessary to keep the company strong in the long run. It was a tough decision, but he believed it was the right one for the future of the business. Things got even worse when United Healthcare decided not to cover a new cancer treatment that many saw as a breakthrough. This decision caused national outrage. Patient advocacy groups claimed the company cared more about money than saving lives. The backlash was harsh and immediate. Eventually, Brian reversed the decision, allowing coverage for the treatment, but the damage was already done. His reputation took a major hit, and for many, this episode left a permanent mark on how they saw him. Brian Thompson's troubles didn't end with the protests and public outrage. Inside the company, there were problems too. His way of managing employees caused tension. The company pushed for high performance and strict goals, which worked well for some employees, but left others feeling overwhelmed and unhappy. This led to many people quitting their jobs and complaints about the workplace culture growing louder. Some of these issues became public when frustrated employees started sharing their stories. And this only added to Brian's challenges and made his already shaky reputation even more complicated. People began to question who Brian really was. Was he a bold leader trying to tackle the tough problems in the healthcare industry? Or was he a corporate boss who had lost sight of the people, both employees and patients he was supposed to help? The arguments continued, and even with his successes, these controversies became a big part of how people remembered his time at United Healthcare. On the evening of December 3rd, 2024, Brian Thompson had every reason to celebrate. He had just secured a major deal that could change healthcare in the United States for the better. The party was being held at Per Se, one of the fanciest restaurants in Manhattan, where the city's most important executives, policymakers, and media figures gathered to celebrate the big achievement. Brian, dressed in his best suit, stepped outside for a quick phone call, still thinking about the future of United Healthcare. The sky was clear, and the cold December air nipped at his face as he dialed the number. But in that moment, something happened that would completely change everything for him and everyone around him. Out of nowhere, a figure stepped out from the shadows. The person moved with chilling calm, heading straight for Brian Thompson. Before Brian could react, a gunshot shattered the quiet night. The bullet hit him hard and he stumbled back, his body jerking before he fell to the cold pavement. Brian, gasping for air, clutched at his chest, his hands covered in blood. At 7:12 in the morning, Thompson was declared dead after being transported to Mount Sinai West Hospital. According to a subsequent autopsy report, the death was caused by a wound to the back of the torso. According to authorities, they found a partially 3D printed Glock 19 and a 3D printed suppressor in the suspect's bag. The ghost gun was made up of a 3D printed lower receiver, a metal slide, intact Glock 19 internals from a parts kit, including a threaded barrel, and a standard Glock magazine. According to the police, the murderer rode off on an e-bike to Central Park, where he dropped off a jacket and a backpack full of Monopoly money near the carousel before leaving the park's west end at 77th Street. The police claim that he then left the city from the George Washington Bridge bus station, which is located farther uptown in Upper Manhattan. Emergency services arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Brian Thompson, a man who had been leading one of the most important healthcare deals, was gone. In the days after, the media jumped on the story, covering it non-stop and turning it into a huge national news event. Rumors and theories spread everywhere, with each news outlet guessing about who might have done it and why. Was it personal? Was it political? Or was there something darker behind it? One thing was clear. Brian Thompson's death had rocked the business world. The New York Police Department quickly got to work on the case, sending detectives to gather all the evidence they could find. They carefully went through security footage from nearby businesses and street cameras and interviewed people who had been around when the shooting happened. Within a few days, a name came up: Luigi Mangione.
Luigi Mangione.
Luigi Mangione.
Luigi Mangione.
Luigi Mangione.
Luigi Mangione, a 45-year-old former worker at a United Healthcare branch, was arrested and charged with the murder. He had a reputation for being tough and quick-tempered and had a history of mental health issues. It turned out that he had been fired from his job at the company months before the murder. His anger toward Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, had built up over time, and it seemed to turn into something much darker. People who knew Mangione said that losing his job had pushed him to hold a deep, bitter grudge against Thompson. The case against Mangione grew stronger with each piece of evidence. One of the most telling pieces were the threatening emails he had sent to Thompson. months before the murder, he had written several emails accusing the CEO of ruining his life. In those messages, Mangione openly promised to get revenge. The emails seemed to show his motive clearly. He had never gotten over being fired, and his anger had twisted into something dangerous. As the investigation continued, the detectives started to wonder if there was more to the story. They looked into other possible reasons for the murder, like rivalries between companies and personal grudges. Some people whispered that there were other employees who didn't like Brian Thompson and might have had their own reasons for wanting to hurt him. However, after weeks of investigation, no new leads appeared to change that Luigi Mangione was the one who killed him. Forensic evidence became a key part of the case. They found gunshot residue on Mangione's hands, which strongly suggested that he had fired the gun. Even more important was the discovery of the gun itself. It was found in a nearby alley, and when it was tested, it matched the bullets found at the crime scene. This gave detectives almost solid proof that Mangione was the one who had killed Thompson. Even with all the evidence, there was something strange about Mangione's behavior during his questioning. His answers were all over the place, like he wasn't fully present or aware of what was happening. It was as if his mind wasn't fully connected to reality. His odd behavior made the detectives wonder if his troubled mental state had affected his judgment. They started to think that maybe he wasn't acting entirely on his own. Perhaps something else or someone else had played a part in what happened. But no matter what, the facts still pointed to Mangione being the one who pulled the trigger. As the investigation went on, the detectives couldn't deny one thing. Luigi Mangione was a man battling his own inner demons, which seemed to drive him to this violent act. Handwritten letter. On December 10th, 2024, journalist Ken Klippenstein shared a 262-word handwritten note that he said was written by Mangione. In the note, Mangione addresses federal law enforcement and explains that the killing was carried out alone. He mentions that the methods used involved basic social engineering, simple computer design, CAD, and a lot of patience. Mangione talks about a spiral notebook containing notes and to-do lists, and he explains that his technology was secured because of his engineering background. He also apologizes for causing pain, but insists that it was necessary. The New York Times later reported that the CAD part referred to the 3D printing of the ghost gun's plastic frame. Mangione goes on to criticize healthcare executives, calling them parasites who had it coming. He condemns the U.S. healthcare system, pointing out that even though it's the most expensive in the world, the U.S. ranks only about 42nd in life expectancy. He specifically mentions United Health's large market value, ranking just behind Apple, Google, and Walmart. Mangione argues that while many had exposed the greed and corruption in American healthcare over the years, nothing had changed. He believes that the issue is not about awareness, but about the power struggles at play. He ends the note by saying, "The shooter is the first person to face this problem so brutally and honestly." The U.S. Attorney's Southern District of New York filed a complaint about the note, calling it the Fed's letter because it was addressed to federal agents. The complaint was made public on December 19, 2024. In early 2025, Mangione's trial began, and it quickly became national news. The courtroom was full of tension, with strong arguments on both sides. The prosecution painted Mangione as a man filled with anger and a need for control, while the defense argued that his actions were the result of years of untreated mental illness. Luigi Mangione facing a series of serious criminal charges, which include 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. In addition to these grave charges, he is also accused of various offenses involving weapons and forgery, as outlined in the official indictment. As the trial went on, it became clear that Luigi Mangione's life had been full of struggles. His family and former co-workers spoke about how hard his life had been. They described a man who couldn't handle the pressures of the world around him. His mother spoke through tears, remembering the boy he once was, a child with great potential, before he slowly started falling apart as he got older. He was always fighting something, she said, her voice shaking, but we didn't know how to help him. At the same time, the trial also revealed more about Brian Thompson, Mangione's victim. Testimonies from people who worked with Thompson at United Healthcare gave a new look at his life. They talked about the stress and pressure that came with his job, suggesting that his intense focus on changing healthcare had worn him down, both physically and mentally. He gave everything to the company, one former co-worker said. He truly believed in what he was doing, but the more he pushed, the more it seemed like everything around him fell apart. Thompson's friends and family talked about how hard he worked and how he always tried to balance his big goals with spending time with his loved ones. But those close to him also revealed how difficult that balance was. They remembered how Thompson often felt alone, too proud to admit how much it was wearing him down. He was always so driven, always focused on making a difference, his brother said. But he didn't know how to stop, and in the end, it became too much for him to handle alone. One of the most emotional moments in the trial came when Thompson's wife took the stand. With tears in her eyes, she spoke about her husband's unshakable commitment to his dream of improving healthcare. Brian truly believed he could change the world, she said, her voice breaking. But the world, it was often too harsh for him to change. The court has now decided to carefully appoint a jury who will oversee the judgment of Luigi Mangione. The next court date has been set for February 21st, 2025. Whatever happens in court, I will keep you guys updated. Would he be found guilty or not? Nobody knows. All we can do is to be optimistic about the trial. If you like this story, give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos coming soon.